Trade talks are escalating for the Pittsburgh Penguins as multiple insiders have revealed a surprising Penguins trade update. We're going to break down exactly what that is as multiple insiders are linking some of the Penguins' top players to multiple Western Conference teams. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the Pittsburgh Penguins, one of my buddies who's a Washington Capitals fan said, we're not going to be able to reach 3,000 subscribers by the end of the month. Isn't that ridiculous, Mark? I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. Come on, Penguins fans, let's hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the Penguins. But first order of business today, Mark, is there's a bunch of trade rumors flying around, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's no surprise at this point, they are sellers. They are probably the only sellers in the league, but that's not to say that they don't value the assets that they're trying to sell. They see, Ricard Rakell, Bryan Rust, Erik Karlsson, they all view them as assets. And we're going to start there with a new report league-wide with a couple teams out of the West, which I think are very interesting, but still in the market. And this is from Frank Saravalli. We're also going to get to something from Elliot Friedman as well. Still in the market, still in the mix for a top six forward. The Red Wings, the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, the Calgary Flames, Canucks, Rangers, Devils, Capitals, Blues, Kraken, and Kings. And for this video today, we're going to focus on Ricard Rakell because there might be some smoke between Ricard Rakell and the St. Louis Blues, who continue to try and upgrade their roster and actually have the salary cap space to make it work. And not only that, their prospect pool, absolutely insane and could interest Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we know that Bryan Rust and Ricard Rakell could be on the way out. Is it both of them? Is it one of them? Mark, I'll throw it over to you. How do you feel about the connection to the Blues with Ricard Rakell? And do you think that the Penguins are going to trade one of, both of, maybe all three of Erik Karlsson, Bryan Rust, and Ricard Rakell?
I mean, I think the big thing is we're seeing league-wide. We've made it very clear, and reports are saying the same, that Kyle Dubas feels like the only general manager looking to sell at the moment, and so many teams are looking to add top six forwards in the script, a center, a winger, and I think Ricard Rakell and Bryan Rust fall perfectly into this. Both guys having career years last year, you're going to get the most value. Reports even said that Dubas was looking for a top prospect and a first for Ricard Rakell going into last year's trade deadline. I think it's very interesting. I know you have two players. Rakell is a guy that put up his career high in points. We've seen Russ go out and score, 30 goals. These guys are going to be and continue to be a hot commodity going into next year, but I don't think Dubas is going to move both players. He still needs to keep a somewhat confident roster to keep Sidney Crosby happy. I mean, that's a full different video, but we know right now, I think Ricard Rakell is the name that's going to be the most intriguing because of his low cap hit and the multiple years on it for these teams looking to buy.
Like you brought up, Rakell especially, and I mean, Bryan Rust had a great season, 31 goals, like you mentioned, playing with Sidney Crosby, but Rakell had a career season. I want to bring up his stats here because, this is a player that can absolutely help a team in their top six. This is a top six player. He scored 70 points last year, a career high. He had 35 goals, very even output as well, which I think is very attractive to a lot of teams out there in the league. A lot of teams are looking to get better. He can play a lot of ice time. He can play on your power play. We know all of these things. And like you mentioned, I don't know about trading both of them at this point. I think you still need to put together, like even on bad teams, which the Penguins are not going to be great next year, somebody has to stay and somebody has to score, right? You still have to put up some type of production in the NHL. So I do think it's Ricard Rakell. I think he's more attractive to other teams. I do think in terms of Bryan Rust, you want to keep Sidney Crosby somewhat in his happy place. We have heard from Elliot Friedman. I wanted to bring this up because this is an interesting report as well, that he's heard that Ricard Rakell would prefer to stay in Pittsburgh, but it's not his call, right? Like, it's Kyle Dubas, if he wants to trade him, if he's getting good offers, it's not like he wants to be traded, not like he wants to move on from the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it's not his call. Kyle Dubas can trade him if he wants to. So I think it's a very attractive option for a lot of teams. Again, last year was his career high, although he's gotten close a couple times, and he's proven at this point that I think he can play in a top six. And if he's playing on a team that has, more offensive firepower outside of just Sidney Crosby, let's say, he will find success. And this contract, I'll throw it over to you again, Mark. This is very attractive for a lot of teams across the league. Like, not only do you view this guy, if you're Kyle Dubas and, Penguins fans, as a very valuable asset that you can get a very good return for, his contract makes it that much better. He's making $5 million which for a 70-point output is amazing in today's NHL, with everyone who puts up 70 points getting like 8, 9, 10 million. He's only 32 and he's locked up for the next 3 seasons, so you have control if you're the team acquiring him. So I think this is very attractive for any team looking to acquire him, and it expires when he's 35, which I think is very manageable. So how do you feel about that? And I feel like they can get quite a nice haul, not like a massive haul or anything like that, but quite a good return for a player like Rakell.
Because I think the biggest thing is the contract is what's going to pull a lot of eyes in. Yes, 70 points is incredible, but when you're looking at a $5 million cap hit, you're looking at right now the salary cap saying being at 94 million. It's going to jump to 100. It's going to go to 110. And year after year, this is going to be a lower cap hit. Each season, it's not going to drop in dollar value, but the cap percentage, which a lot of people are going to have to start looking at, is going to get smaller. So these teams looking to compete, they want to win a championship in this 2 to 3 year window. There's so much value in Ricard Rakell. You get a guy that comes in, can score at bare minimum 20 goals for you in the top 6. He put up 70 points. I think this is going to pull in a very good prospect. And like you said, the St. Louis Blues have a very deep prospect pool. Dvorsky is a name that's very interesting. Maybe they get him. They just drafted Carbonneau. I can't see them moving on from him as much as they love him. So it's going to get interesting, but I do think a guy like Juracek on defense is another option. The Blues are a very interesting team. Even the Toronto Maple Leafs, I can't see Dubas making a trade with his former team, but I mean, if they wanted to give a call and even try to pry out someone like Easton Cowan to join Sidney Crosby, it does give a lot of leverage for Kyle Dubas.
Absolutely, and you bring up a good point. There's a couple, if you look at the Blues, not only lineup, but their depth chart, there's a lot of guys that I think, you know, if you talk to Blues fans, would be considered untouchables, like a Dvorsky, which I think would be a great get in a trade like this. You know, you're guaranteeing the Blues get a top 6 forward there in Ricard Rakell, even though you have Jimmy Snuggerud, who could probably play in their top 6, and I think that's the plan moving into next season. But, you know, if they wanted to add help like Rakell, maybe you're talking about Dvorsky. I don't think that would be very smart on the Blues part. But like you mentioned, they have some really good defense prospects as well, like a plethora of them. They have a couple that you can pick from that will make an impact at the NHL level, like a Juracek, for example. They have Steinberg up the middle as well if you want like a center prospect. So a couple interesting options from the St. Louis Blues, I think, if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins looking for a return for Ricard Rakell, in terms of not just rebuilding, but adding younger players who can make an impact probably soon, right? Like Dvorsky, I think, is very attractive if you're Kyle Dubas, because this is a guy that could probably play on this NHL roster. He would be on the Pittsburgh Penguins next season. So that's going to be interesting. But the way that the lineup currently shakes out, like you said, I want to dive into this before we wrap up. You know, trading, because we've heard that Karlsson's on the block right now. He's on the market. They're fielding calls for not just him, but Rakell and Rust. Would you trade all 3 of them in one burst? Would you trade one of them? Would you trade 2 of 3 of them? Because I'm in the camp that I think you trade one of them, only one of them. You get, you know, a decent return for them because, like I mentioned, even on the worst teams in the league, somebody has to score. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the worst team in the league. I don't think they will be, but I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, and you need to keep some players around so Sidney Crosby isn't looking around and going, maybe I do want to leave. I think you have to avoid that situation.
I think you do move at least one of them this offseason. If that's Rakell, Russ, or Karlsson, one of these guys most likely will not be on the roster. But I do think when you get into trade deadline, if the Penguins are still the only team selling, I think Kyle Dubas will have a lot of teams up against the wall where they're looking for a player they want to add. Everyone's trying to compete. Dubas is the only one willing to take a call and so on. I think you can get even more value, especially if you want to retain. And listen, you do not want to retain on this Karlsson deal or Rakell or any of this. You want to kind of clear the cap, get young players in. But I do think we're going to eventually see 2 of the guys moved off. I predict it's going to be one this summer and then possibly one at deadline or going into next summer, depending on how desperate a team out west or even an Eastern Conference team ready to pay the premium might be willing to pay.
My hot take, and I think that you bring up a good point about the trade deadline, but my hot take, and it might be a cool take at this point, is one of Erik Karlsson, Brian Rust, and Ricard Rakell will not be a Pittsburgh Penguin to start the season. I think Kyle Dubas wants to pull that trigger now, because once the season starts, you never know what happens. Injuries, the value could drop. Ricard Rakell and Brian Rust, they're at their absolute peak of value right now. And even Erik Karlsson, he's not getting any younger. So I feel like one of them will not be a Penguin to start the season. But let us know how you feel in the comments. I think it's an interesting fit. I think you can get a young player that is ready to make an impact at the NHL level if you're calling the Blues versus any other team. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Let us know how you feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.